Hey guys, let's look at some really useful formulas that can do some hard math for you uh, in Excel. So before we get started too far, I want to talk about these cells that I have in these two spots here. Now I'm actually using a formula. We're not going to really go over this, but I wanted to show it to you. This formula, it chooses a random number between 1 and 100. So all of these, it's a random number between 1 and 100. So when you're looking at your version of this file, and actually if I make any change on the screen, it changes those numbers. So every time there's a change, it changes those numbers. So don't get too confused if you see these things change as we're playing around with this cell. I probably could have just chosen random numbers here and it would have been fine, but I thought, well, it's a sheet about formulas, let's use a formula. So there you go, there's your formula. Rand between 1 and 100. If I wanted 1 and 10, I could just change this number to 10 or whatever. So you see how that works. Now the formula that we're showing here is the sum formula, which is it automatically adds up the numbers. So the formula is equals sum, open parentheses, C2 through C11. Now, when you're writing out formulas, you don't have to type in C2 plus C3 plus C4 plus C5 and so forth. You can use I just totally forgot the name of it, but you can use the thing here, whatever that's called, to establish the range. And so this Excel knows, okay, everything between C2 and C11 is going to be included. Now, you don't have to type all this out. Excel knows that this is a very common formula. So guys, there's a shortcut. You can highlight from the place you want the formula to be. You can highlight up over all of that, and then you hit this auto sum, and it puts in this formula for us. Another useful one is average. It works the exact same way. It's taking the average, in this case, of H2 through H11, and it's going to tell us whatever the average is. And you can find this under the shortcut as well here for average. Another cool one, I didn't put it on here, is under here is the count number, max and min. So the count number will tell you how many fields are in here. So let's see how many numbers are there in this 44.9. So I can grab all of this, go here, count number, and it says 11. So that means we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, because this range here is H2 through H12. So we might need to go in and adjust that to H11 and see that, okay, there's actually 10 numbers here that make up this particular average. So that might be useful information. Instead of having to sit there and count it out, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, like a dummy, you can use this count. And it's, look at that, look how easy that is. It's just count the number from H2 to H11. And now you can be all fancy and not have to count. And that's the best. All right, so what if you need to add specific things out of a list, but not everything? And what if it's a really long list, and going through and trying to figure out, okay, no, we want to add, in this case, the cost of technology in these departments. Well, if here's the technology department, here's the technology department, here's the technology department, we got to look through all of these and try and keep track of, wait, okay, so we want 04 and 06 and all that. No, forget that. We don't need to do that. We can use a very cool formula called sum if. Okay, so sum if is going to add a cell in a particular range under this. It's gonna, well, okay, let me start over. Sum if is going to add things up comparing two different ranges. So what this means is that it's gonna sum in the situation where N2 through N10, so that's N2 through N10, if it equals the word technology, then it's going to add up the columns that are aligned with it in O 3 through 10, okay? Or 2 through 10 in this case. That should really say 3 through 10. Right? So, yeah, so here's the actual formula itself. So sum if n3 through n10 equals technology, then you're going to add up the O equivalent, right? So technology, 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 right? We could change this to say math, and now we get a different number there, right? So we can go back and call it social studies, and another number yet again. So that's a really, really neat one to help you out. And find that information for you. So count here's another issue of, let's say you don't need to know the total, but you just need to know how many times the math department comes up in this particular case. So this count math, it's count if through n2 through n10 equals math. So you're just going to tell it the range and then what you want it to find. So it's going to search in this range to find math written out, right? And it counts twice. There are 2 instances where math came up. So if I wanted to change this to technology, I changed the code itself to say technology, and look, now it says 3. It counted 3, right? Leave it as math, and then it's 2. So that's a really, really, really awesome formula to help you quickly find how many of a particular thing shows up in your formula. All right. So what about this other one? This is a fancy one, concatenate. And yes, I did have to look up how to say it. And no, I am not sure that I am saying it correctly. But that is the term here for this particular formula. This formula is used if you have multiple points of data that you want to combine into one cell. So let's say we've got first name, last name, address, phone number, if they're cool or not, and some note or comment about that particular field. And we want to take all of this information and put it into one cell, right? So in this particular case, we've got, we use this concatenate, and then you tell it which cells to put together, okay? Now I've got S2, and then I've got this blank space between 2 quotes. And what that's doing is it's forcing a space between first and last name. There's not a space after the N in the first one, and there's not a space before the F in this one. And Excel's not smart. It's not going to say, oh, well, that's the first and last name. It needs to have a space between it. They're just going to jam it all together. So you can put a little quote and add whatever you want in there. If I happen to know that Jason's middle name is Alexander, I can leave that in there with a space before and after. And look at that. Look, it added the Jason and then Alexander and all that right to it. So whatever you type between the quotes is going to show up as text, is what I'm trying to get at. So I can leave it just like this, and we're good to go. Let's see, that's centered. You notice here that there's a space and then T2 for last name, and then there's not any space indicated between T2 and U2, U2 being the address. And look right here, there isn't a space between the L and the 7 there from Farrell and Jason. So this is a really good way to quickly chunk a bunch of information from different cells in together as one cell, put all together. This is best for like text and things mixed together. If you were to put numbers in with a concatenate, it would just kind of list them out. That's not as good of an idea. So probably stick with text related fields or things like phone numbers that are obviously not used for math purposes. Okay, let's look at a fun little left and right and mid formula. So let's say we've got these school names here, and we want to come up with some quick abbreviations for it in the Excel here. So if we've got Boswell, we can use the formula equals left, and then you tell it the source material, which is AC3, and you tell it how many characters from left to right do you want to include. So from left to right, 3, BOS for BOS. So that means that the abbreviation is BOS. Saginaw equals Saginaw. Chisholm Trail looks like Chicago, and Watson looks like what? So you've got some options there. You could change this to right as well. So if you went over here and you changed that left to right, it's going to pull the last 3 instead of the first 3. So obviously it doesn't make sense in abbreviation for this particular situation, but it is something that might come up. So you can pull that data that way. You can also pick out of the middle. So in this particular case, the cat in the hat, let's say we want to just grab the cat part out and leave the and all that, the rest of that title in there. So we can tell it mid, meaning we're going to pull out of the middle of the data. We're going to start in AF3, so this is our source material we're looking at, and then we're going to start 5 characters in. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, the 5th character in, because THE is 3, the space is 4, cat, the C in cat is 5, and we're going to grab 3 characters out of that particular situation. So that's how you get cat right there. So we can stop right there is what we can